Climb into the cockpit with pilot and LinkSquares Chief Legal Officer Tim Parilla as he invites legal leaders aboard to share advice that will help you navigate even the most turbulent times of in-house counsel work. We'll cover a range of topics from data privacy to legal team structure to public company transactions and beyond. You don't want to miss this series. Fasten your seatbelt and prepare for takeoff. You're listening to Cockpit Counsel.
So welcome back to another episode of Cockpit Counsel. My name is Tim, Chief Legal Officer at LinkSquares, and today we have one of our technical solutions attorneys, Sam Nickerson. Sam, welcome.
Thanks so much. So excited to be here.
Awesome to have you. Thanks for taking time. I know you've been super busy, and especially as we get to this part of the quarter. So really appreciate you taking the time. So before we get into it, I ask everybody, what is your pre-flight ritual?
Yes, great question. My pre-flight ritual is running late. I have this terrible habit of packing right before I call the Uber to get to the airport. So I'm always very stressed, but I have yet to miss a flight. So
do you have pre-check?
No.
Oh my
I
gosh.
need to get pre-check. I got in a bad habit of flying during COVID when there was no lines.
Yeah.
And now that's come back to really bite me.
Yeah. Well, as long as you're not missing flights, you're okay.
Yes,
So
I have good luck there.
tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I am an attorney, technical solutions attorney at LinkSquares. I think, when you're in law school, you don't exactly know where you're going to land in your career. So even the decision to go to law school, I felt like I was always just kind of on this line of is this going to be a good fit for me? When I was I'm probably not the only attorney to have this experience, but when I was in middle school and high school, it was my parents that were like, oh, you should go to law school. You're so good at arguing. And in a more serious vein, I always loved school. I loved reading and writing and speaking and being involved. So I felt like law school would be a good fit. But when it came to after law school, wasn't exactly sure if I'd want to be at a firm, want to be in-house, just even the career options available. So kind of proceeded with caution throughout all of the stages in education, high school, college. Ended up taking the LSAT and deciding that I was going to try law school and
see how it goes.
See how it went. and I'm really glad I did. I enjoyed that challenge in education and even just the training within law school I found really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit of my background, just kind of figuring out what's the best fit for me and then trying to make those decisions.
Did you have one of those professors in school who would make you stand up in front of the class and basically humiliate you?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel I don't know if they still do that in law schools these days. What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2020, which was really interesting because COVID hit that year and we went entirely remote for my last few months of school and I took the bar exam online.
That's
huge
wild.
shift. Yeah.
Okay.
Very odd.
Did you take a mass bar?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice. Did you take any others or not?
No, I think I will, but the reciprocity rules got a little shifted with the COVID bar because it was online and slightly different. But I think I will eventually take another bar.
Nice. So after law school, you ended up at a firm for a little while, right?
Yep. Worked in a law firm that was mostly on the transactional side. I think when I was in law school, I was like, all right, let's figure out what fits and what doesn't fit.
Right.
Didn't necessarily want to do big law or a partner track right away. I kind of wanted to settle in a smaller firm. So ended up at a small firm doing a lot of commercial real estate, business development, that type of work, which I absolutely loved. And I felt because I was at such a small firm, I got amazing attention and one-on-one time with the partners. It was a small family firm and really got poured into, which I'm very grateful for to have had that experience.
That's awesome. And then you landed here with us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so talk a little bit about that. What made you you look, or was it one of our recruiters that like reached out to you and snagged you away?
No, it was actually LinkedIn. I was
Okay.
just like perusing to
Yeah.
see what options were available, and found, the technical solutions attorney position, which I obviously never heard of that position. I don't know if it exists at any other company. So, I looked into it and read the description and thought like, oh, this sounds like something I'd be so interested in, because it's a lot of communications involved in like having a legal background.
Right.
So I applied on LinkedIn, which I never thought would avail to anything, but ended up hearing back from the recruiter or like from that department in the company, and it was a great fit.
That's awesome. So talk a little bit about your day in and day out here, and it's always interesting to talk to attorneys who have gone sort of down an alternative legal career path, and then the firm or even in-house practice.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear how you're finding that transition from the firm to the TSA role, and how you're finding the role and what your legal education is kind of bringing to your success here.
Yeah, so the day-to-day life of a TSA involves, first and foremost, like full knowledge of the LinkSquares product, which is contract lifecycle management tool for in-house teams. So like the first really month of my time at LinkSquares was spent like watching product demonstrations, like playing around in the tool and like really getting to know it. The day in, day out of a TSA is lots and lots of product demonstrations and getting to work with account executives as we present the product to prospective customers, which I really enjoy. I feel like it's given me like a front row seat into a lot of different types of in-house teams and types of companies and the needs that they have. So it's a lot of learning for me in terms of, what people are facing as they run big companies and small companies too. So
absolutely. And when you get onto one of these demos first, do you already have the background on the company? Like how are you working to prepare for those demos? And is it sort of like a one size fits all, or are you really like diving in and getting to know a lot about the conversations the AEs have had with the prospective customer? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, good question. So there is a standard demo that I could probably do in my sleep now, of just like exactly how to explain the product at like a high level. But there is lots of prep involved, I would say, typically between the account executives and the TSAs. We try to meet before the call and kind of discuss the use case of the company, like their size, what they're looking for, if they want, a contract drafting tool as well as contract management. So we kind of get to plan the demo in terms of what we anticipate their needs are and any use cases. So there is prep like involved in that regard, but sometimes it's about asking the right questions on the call to the prospect that kind of key into different pain points that they might be facing. And then can address those, using the tool a few different ways.
What are some of the most common pain points that you found sort of universally around the prospective customers that you've dealt with?
Yeah, I think in terms of like contract management, just the lack of visibility into contracts that are even in existence is a huge pain point for companies that don't have any sort of CLM, which is really really common. There's contracts in like people's personal computers and stored in all kinds of different folders. So when it comes time to grow the company, it's really difficult to even access all of those agreements. So I think just having a centralized repository and showing that in the first 30 seconds of the demo often, really wins people over, because it is such a burden to have to keep up with people and make sure that contracts are getting forwarded to the right place. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's funny. I tell people all the time that our product is really, really simple, but it's not necessarily easy, but it's really, really simple. And what I mean by that is when you first come into a company as as whether it's the first in-house counsel or you're replacing, somebody
Mhm.
or joining a team, you're going to look at the contracts.
Hmm.
And if you're trying to chase down contracts, like my first job, people literally had like folders on their laptops that like their laptop could have died in that contract, which vaporized, right?
Yeah, totally.
And but it's incredible how valuable it is to just have all the contracts in one place. But it sounds like such a simple thing, but anybody who's spent any time in an organization
Right.
that doesn't have CLM
Yeah.
is like, yeah, our contracts are everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally.
So
And then for customers that like already have a CLM in place, but it doesn't utilize AI or it doesn't have like our AI, I think they're really wowed when we get to like jump into a contract and there's like well over 100 different values that pull really accurately. Like one of my favorite things to do actually like in the sales cycle is to run a proof of concept where they like the prospect will send over like a group of their contracts. We load them into a demo account and then kind of get to walk them through like how their contracts actually work in the tool. I think that's sometimes where the light bulb goes off, is that it's like, wow, this is not only centralizing my contracts and organizing them really well, but it's pulling so much information out of them that can be utilized within the tool.
Yeah, and it's incredible to see too, like when we talk about our SMART values and like going through it and improving them, and like looking at how many inquiries hit across our user base, like it's incredible the amount of traffic that our platform actually gets, like for these SMART values, and it's stuff that like I was a customer before coming here. I was at DraftKings, and it like I recognized the value of it there. We had it there, and we used it for financings, right? For our venture financings, just build disclosure schedules and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was done in partnership with some of the folks that were on my team there. But day in and day out, the folks that were working with contracts were actually like getting these insights every single day. And it's something that like I thought was maybe a little bit unique to the DraftKings business, but obviously coming here, like recognizing, okay, it's really an active user base, which is pretty cool. So it's fun.
That's great.
But obviously more companies need to get on the technology bandwagon here a little bit. From your perspective, you talked about not many these customers already having a solution. Do you know whether they're using any other types of legal tech or?
I feel like the spread of like people that can benefit from LinkSquares, like therefore people that we prospect to, is so huge. Like there are sometimes companies we reach out to that have no legal team at all, and they're just kind of doing their best with managing contracts, and they don't really have a ton of different tools. We also demo to like enterprise level companies that have lots of different software in place, lots of different decision makers, sometimes like around the world. So when we schedule our calls, it's like coordinating the best time with teams like in Asia, in Australia, in Germany. Like when can we all talk about LinkSquares? So I would say it depends. Sometimes there's nothing, and sometimes there's already a lot in place, or they're offboarding another tool. So the conversation does change, like depending on that use case.
Yeah. What have you? That's interesting. What have you seen is the number one reason why people will churn from another provider?
I would say it's because they're not getting the benefit out of it that they anticipated. Like they're not, I think, really satisfied with the amount of time that the tool is saving them. Like I think that goes more towards like the power of what, like the AI, if that system has AI, what it's able to extract and like what processes for the team that the tool can, make more efficient.
Right.
If it's not doing that after a year. Another thing actually that just came to mind is that oftentimes, like with competitors, they have purchased a tool maybe 6 or 9 or even like a year prior to talking with us,
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't finished their onboarding process with that
That's
tool.
wild.
Yeah, which I can't imagine, especially when you're, paying a premium to have a service,
Yeah.
and it, still isn't working for you
Right.
6 months in. So
Well, I mean, also, could you imagine like being an attorney working in that environment where like you don't it takes you over a year or over 6 months to get something done that's not like
yeah,
a case.
yeah, right. Something with a huge payout. Yeah,
Right.
no, that would be terrible.
Yeah, that's wild. With the TSA team, what do you think is like the next iteration or development in sort of like how that team is going to progress?
Yeah, I love that question. So a little like background, the team had 3 members on it when I was hired in January, and
Good.
today we're about to hire our 11th TSA. So there's been a lot of growth in the 7 or 8 months. that
I
I've been
love how
here.
your team has more attorneys than mine.
yeah, that's actually crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is. But
So the team's been growing, and it's been really enjoyable to welcome new members onto the team and hear about everyone else's backgrounds, how they found the TSA role, and then kind of create a more formalized training process for TSAs, along with standardizing the demo a little bit more. 3 guys that were on the team prior to me joining are all still here, and they're all awesome, and
Yeah.
I think had their own kind of way of creating the demo flow, which is really similar to how we all demo today. And they set a really good baseline for us to grow as a team. But as we've hired more and more people onto the team, it's all right, this can't be tribal knowledge. We need to have a better process in place, and more resources for us to reference. So as we're growing the team, I think a lot of our efforts have been towards standardizing the demo process, defining the TSA role even more in the sales cycle. What is our responsibility to address versus this more sales side, the managers or the AEs on the call.
Right.
So kind of putting that in paper is something that I've really enjoyed, and also the LinkSquares product has developed so much since I've been here. Since January, we've released so many new features that now have to make their way into the demo.
Yeah.
So it's actually becoming more and more difficult to fit all of the functionality of the tool into an hour presentation,
Right.
and sometimes less than an hour. So
Yeah. So how does your team sort of cope with selecting which ones? I mean, obviously you know a little bit about what's important to the customer before you jump on. Like
Right.
you're saying, you work with the AEs to figure that out.
Yeah.
But if you're picking and choosing features, how do you sort of go about that?
yeah, a lot of that draws from what we've feedback from the AE about previous calls that they've had with the prospect. If somebody is very concerned about, an audit upcoming, we're going to really focus our time into analyze how we organize the contracts and extract data. Then they can use that data, to run different types of reports. So
Right.
understanding the use case is kind of essential to run a tailored demo like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the diligence that we do prior to the call really is reflected in that selection of what to show and how to emphasize the different features.
Right.
So I don't know. Sometimes it's hit or miss. I'll think that somebody really wants to see the repository, and
Right.
in the back of their mind is well, what are we going to do when we receive a contract from a third party and have to redline it? So
Right.
sometimes you got to switch gears.
So do you have a regular feedback loop with the product team here where, I mean, obviously you're interacting with so many customers and you have the legal background to understand,
Right.
if they're asking, hey, does your product do this, that, or the next thing? You understand probably what's going on in their department, what the real root of the problem is they're trying to solve. Are you working with the product team with some frequency?
Yeah, I think that's like the coolest part about the TSA role is that we know the product, get to work with sales and show it off to these legal teams. But then on a regular basis, we get to meet with product and kind of share that feedback. That's another part of the like TSA process. It's being refined and standardized. Like we've hired Katie, like the voice of the customer, and her function is kind of to help the TSA feedback and sales feedback from calls make its way to product so that we can develop with even more intentionality as we build out the tool. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm jealous of that aspect. That like obviously Jonathan and Brittany and I work closely with product, but like you actually are able to have some excitement in your role where you're talking to customers and doing it. Like I tell people in the onboarding session all the time that like the actual substantive legal work at LinkSquares is like cry in your cereal boring. Because it just is. And so the only way I could get like convince people to actually come and work here has been like, you get to talk to the product team.
Right.
Like, yes.
Right.
Oh
yeah. It's so impressive. Like even at our like the all hands from I think the month of July, like hearing about how we're building out like the team of engineers at the company is just insane because I mean that's not the way my brain works. Like I have a brother who's getting his PhD right now in biomedical engineering, and he'll try and talk to me about like I don't know, coding and random engineering things.
Right.
And I try to absorb what I can, but I think we just have some real geniuses that are developing the product, which is awesome.
Yeah, those folks, every time I'm able to have conversations with our engineers, I'm blown away by the way that their minds work. They're really impressive people.
Agreed.
So obviously being a lawyer and working with salespeople, one of the important things obviously is developing that relationship. Can you talk a little bit about, when you first came in, how you went about building that relationship with the AEs?
Sure. Yeah. So when I first joined, I was really intimidated just by being on a sales floor. Like, salespeople are awesome and they're all so confident on the phone. So I was like, oh my gosh, these people really know what they're talking about. They're really established in this company. So I had a bit of intimidation just because every other time I've started a job, it's been a much more low-key environment, like in a law office or something like that. So I was intimidated, but I think given the way that our two teams were designed to like collaborate and work towards one goal, just like, convincing another customer to purchase LinkSquares, that's really unifying. And I think especially when I really ramped up and demos that I had done had started to result in like close won deals, I think that was super exciting, especially like at the end of June for Q2, like I don't know, lots of like high fives, lots of celebration as a team. So I think just like working together and really working to help the account executives like in their goals is really bonding. So I've had a blast actually, like getting to work with the sales team. They're so fun and it's a much more entertaining environment, I will say, than in your own office at a firm. So I'm enjoying that high energy environment for the time being.
Oh, absolutely. And especially at a tech company.
Oh, yeah.
That's a growing tech company, startup feel.
Yeah.
And having that energy every single day is awesome. I love walking around the sales floor and seeing
it's a party
everybody
over there.
buzz. They got the music going and the whole thing. But that's a tough job. I don't know. I don't know how those folks do it. For every call where someone actually is polite to them,
right?
I'm sure they get like 100 of like people just saying like, "Will you please die?"
Yeah. Well, something that was like just hilarious in the past month. I think the sales team does like a calling bonanza every so often where they just cold call like nonstop for like 5 hours.
Okay.
So we're not doing demos during that time. So all the TSAs are free. And a few of us were hopping on the phones and like trying out cold calling just for fun. And
cold calling for fun.
Yeah,
All right.
well, yeah, I was kind of off to the side, but a few of my team members were like just killing it on the phones and mostly getting hung up on. But someone had called actually one of my buddies from law school and led with the line, like, do you know Sam Nickerson? And they were like, yes, I do. So they passed me the phone. I got to catch up with a buddy who just went in-house.
That's
and
awesome.
then booked a demo with him. So it was fun. And I was like, oh, this can't be that hard. I just had one call and booked a demo. But that was a fun time there. Very high energy over there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I think we may have a couple of questions. Alyssa, got any audience feedback here?
We do. What is a piece of advice for somebody considering a different career path with their legal background, but isn't sure where to start?
Ooh, that is a great question. I think first, like when you're making a career decision, you can probably speak to this even more than I can, Tim, but when you're making a career decision, I think you have to remember that like life is long, life is short, but it's also long, and you can make different career decisions. And if it's not the right move, you can easily pivot. That was kind of how I approached law school and how I approached even like taking the TSA job. Thought it sounded like a really fun opportunity, but like thankfully the job market for attorneys and just jobs in general has been pretty good right now. So I thought, you know what, if this doesn't work out, I can always pivot and go back to, all of the other opportunities that are out there. So I think like acknowledging that decisions like these have weight, but they're not permanent, is great when you're making a career switch like this. And then in terms of like the TSA role in particular, I feel like it's been so helpful for me even to learn about like other in-house teams, the challenges that they're facing. Like I feel like I've gotten like 100 internships at different companies with their legal teams because I just get such a cool snapshot of like their day-to-day lives. So even though I'm not like technically practicing law, I do still feel like I'm like sharpening my skills and my awareness of like legal problems that get solved by attorneys. So
that's a great point. I think like especially in-house, like there are relatively few things that you're doing in-house that would qualify as like practicing law from like but you're regularly solving legal problems, and I think that's a meaningful distinction to make, and from the perspective of somebody who who's taken a little bit of a less traditional path to get in-house. Like that's the way that I think the executives at large that are not legal professionals view what the legal team should be doing. Right? They're like, all right, we have problems that are business problems that have some sort of a legal implication. Let's just make the lawyers deal with it. But at the end of the day, more often than not, what you're dealing with are truly business problems. So it's that's a great perspective, and you're right. Like you've absolutely seen probably in 1 week you see more law departments than I'll work in my career. Right. Which is an amazing perspective, especially just being a few years out of school. Like, I'm not saying we don't want to lose you here, but like, and please don't leave. Steve,
I'm here.
Steve will fight me if you leave. But when it does come time for you to go and pursue something different, I mean, having that perspective and being able to go in-house with that perspective is going to be invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alyssa, what else we got?
What is your favorite LinkSquares feature to demo, if you have one?
Favorite feature to demo? Great question. I think my favorite thing to demo is, okay, I'm going to say two things. First thing, I love running a report and analyze, and specifically like in a proof of concept account with their contracts, I love like tailoring it as much as possible to what they want to see, and then showing them what would take potentially like hours of their day or like months worth of, you know, a project that they're handling like on the side on top of all their other work, that I can press like 3 buttons and it's extracted in a couple seconds. I love showing that, and then just pausing or like pushing stuff in that data into a spreadsheet,
Right.
and having everyone's eyes just go wide and think about how long that could have taken if they had to do it manually. So yeah, I like showing that.
Thinking about how long it did take them when they did it
Exactly.
manually.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm not very fond of Excel spreadsheets, and the thought of copying and pasting text in there, just no thanks.
Exactly. And I mean, being able to, from that, being able to like build disclosure schedules and just like, it's instant.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
totally.
And
Yeah.
what's the other one?
I also really like building out templates. I think
Okay.
that's just like, I don't know. I think it's really fun when someone sends over their contract, we can like tokenize different fields, and then it's really cool. Just load it into the system, and then they have a workflow that's like really flexible, and I like showing how simple it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else, Alyssa?
We got one more.
All
What's
right.
it like working at a legal tech company with a legal background, but not on the legal team?
Ooh, good question. I think being an attorney on a sales team there's a lot of flattery going on, a lot of account executives being like, oh, the attorney in the room, and lots of being pumped up on calls, which is kind of fun. I feel still like, you know, we get to meet with the legal team, and we have, you know, I think bi-weekly or bi-monthly, however you want to say that, syncs where we get to talk about like your experience with the product, what you guys are working on, and then, you know, you get to hear the same feedback from us. So I appreciate that connection point a lot. Just as, you know, it's almost like another user of LinkSquares that we get to chat with. So that's cool. But yeah, it is a unique experience being an attorney without being on the legal team. In some ways, it's like very freeing because you don't have the same you know, workload that you guys have over on your side in terms of redlining and then actually making the business decisions. But
Yeah, I think, well, the grass is always a little bit greener on the other side, I think. You know, there are definitely days where I would rather be sitting in your chair than in mine. But, you know, it's an incredible role, and just such a hugely important part of the company. And you know, what you bring to the sales process is just unmatched. You know, and obviously like I said, I would pick any of you for the legal team if I could, but like I said, Steve would never allow it.
probably not.
So, well, thank you so much for sitting down and taking a little bit of time out of your day. It was awesome to get your perspective, and yeah, see you on the sales floor.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim.